Okay, welcome back to Brilliant Investor here, the show where we dive into stories of industry leaders who are shaping the future. And today we have a special guest, Henry Silva Rojas, founder of the Rojas Empire of Design, an expert in architectural design and real estate investment. Now, with over 581 unit conversions under his belt, and maybe more, he's gonna tell me he's helping investors unlock the full potential of their properties across Ontario. Henry, welcome to the show.
For having me on. Honestly, I'm very excited to talk about real estate, talk about permits, architecture, everything we need to know about, and what we do here in Ontario. So very
Yeah,
excited.
great. Henry, your story is really fascinating. I mean, you started out as an architectural draftsman, you transitioned into real estate invest. Can you take us back to what sparked your interest in architecture and how that led you really into real estate?
100%. So I've always in my whole life, I always been like a somewhat of a designer. I like to draw. I like art. I like to do anything to do with being creative. That's what really the core of me is. And when I started to look at my careers back in high school and, being that sort of person that I am there, I started to look at what can I actually do here. So normally I like to work with my family in construction or doing some household type of things, but soon realized I wasn't very handy. Like I like to see it, I like the process, I like the fact that it's all construction. You build something from scratch to something, but I'm just never handy. So in my head, I like to be creative, but I also want to be part of the family business or help out my family in some sort of way. So I found architecture to be sort of the middle ground in between both worlds that I can kind of enjoy to design, but also be part of the whole construction side of things. So from there, started my architectural journey into my post-secondary schooling there.
Hmm.
Finished up a couple of years afterwards, and then right away got into the workforce. So I never really took like a gap year or anything. Immediately after graduation, started working for a custom home designer in Oakville of I think it was 2017, 2018.
Yes.
And then from there, first things first is being in a residential space, look at custom homes, not even just like renovations or, additions, just custom homes and how they're beautifully designed in downtown Oakville. It's like incredible. So it's nothing like some of the shoe boxes we see here today. So from
Yeah.
that point, I got to appreciate architecture even more than I did before, saw the beauty of it. But then as soon as I kept working on that sort of like mindset there, I saw how complex it can be as well, right? Everything that you do custom in any sort of field and industry it gets very busy. It's not as easy as your simple cookie cutter type of projects out there. So to me, it just didn't seem like the right sort of business move to continue with the custom stuff.
Okay.
And while I was still working with the custom home designers at that time, I was also exploring a little bit on the real estate side back in 2017, 2018. Now, at that time, I wasn't too knee deep into this whole real estate as I am today. I was just taking on some projects, helping with a few basement apartments, started to do some apartment building designs with my uncle Taco. And then from there, we started snowballing those sort of projects from 2017 as I was moving up in the scale of the architecture field from like the draftsman, designer, senior permit expert there from other different companies. So I was working both, 9 to 5 job and then 6 to 10 job type of thing.
Okay.
Trying to see
So,
like
so
where.
when you say moving into the real estate side, just to start, I want to cut you off there. Are you talking about your focus into property investment projects?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the whole idea was just like trying to have a clear understanding of what I wanted to do. Like for a few years, I was in that space where I still love architecture, but I was starting to appreciate real estate a little bit more and even trying to be more involved in those real estate projects. I just didn't know where I was standing in until finally, and this is where some people see it as bad or good, but when COVID happened, it kind of changed everyone's perspectives a little bit from working from home or
Yeah.
looking to real estate a little bit more closely at that time. And at that
Okay.
point, I just kind of shifted over my career a little bit to becoming a construction manager for a firm. And at that point, I started working on more real estate projects. So away from architecture, more to real estate, kind of not the hands on, but more of coordinating and being the manager of that sort of construction firm. At that point, I just started to understand a little bit more of the real estate and start to be more involved on the day-to-day basis on what their daily tasks are from both, how you finance the projects, what to consider during renovations. I already understood the permit side of things. So I kind of pieced a lot of things together where, after a year or so of doing that sort of job, I started to appreciate real estate a little bit more and started actually looking to projects I can do myself. So
Okay.
a
Would
year
you
later,
say
yep, go ahead. Yep.
I'm sorry, I was going to say, would you say that around COVID, around that time, that was maybe a turning point for you that made you shift primarily into these types of projects?
100%. I think that's like, when I look at my career from the grand scale of things, COVID was really the time, the turning point exactly to my career changing from the architectural side to the real estate side. Obviously, because a lot of people were looking into it, being concerned with their financial state during the whole COVID period. I was looking for like, maybe a secondary job or looking to see what else I can do with my, life at that point. And
Okay.
real estate really kind of helped me understand like that is something I feel passionate about, and to look at the numbers and seeing that it is sort of, a step in or turning point to my whole career, shifting over from creativity to more of like, creating things for architectural purpose to create, permit sort of strategies for my clients for the real estate side.
Okay. So the real estate market, for sure, we have seen all some massive shifts, especially as you said, at post pandemic. So how have you adapted your investment strategy now to stay ahead?
100%. So I think obviously it's changed a lot in the last couple of years, mostly, and from what I've been seeing, it's changed a lot since Bill 23 back in January 2023 when the province started allowing all these 3 unit conversions everywhere. A lot of people who did duplexes said, let's do triplex because it's like it's not that much harder.
Yeah.
Which I found out firsthand hits much harder than like just adding one more unit. And I can speak from personal experience because my very first property I bought, and this is like a year after, I decided to shift over my career. In 2021, I bought property in Welland, Ontario, south of St. Catharines, single family home, bought at a good price. And to me, again, I was like similar minded. I was like, oh, a triplex can't that be that much harder. But I learned as doing that project myself, funding the project myself, no JVs, no one else really being a part of that, just me, myself, and my brother as well. So at that time, we learned very quickly that a triplex is much more difficult to work with and much more costly and less returns right away. Obviously, we gutted the whole property ourselves because we had some problems with the infrastructure, but at the end of the day, it's just the cost didn't make sense to that. So as soon as we finished that project, we went straight to like commercial buildings. So from that triplex, we started working on like a 5 to 8 unit project at that point because we understood the commercial lending, the commercial financing side of things was a lot better to kind of get into, or a lot easier to get into than a residential side things where you have to kind of, our triplex is comparable with every other triplex in the city. And so, if somebody did cheaply than ours, it's like almost as if our work doesn't matter. Whereas in commercial spaces, 5 units or more, they don't care about comparables. They just care about what's the income provided for that property.
Yeah, and that's very important. I mean, that's something that investors, need to know going into it is that although, the buy-in or the hurdles are a little higher, you're taking on a property where the lenders care only really about the income, the net operating income of the property, and not what the next property looks like down the street. You're really basing it more on the numbers, and you're getting into a different class, and it's actually sometimes, and less risky in some ways because your rents are, more, you have more rent, you have more units, you have more rent, you have, it's easier maybe to carry. And also you're not comparing it to the next guy right down the street. So you make a very good point.
No, 100%. And that's where I kind of saw that right away after we finished the triplex and our property there. And honestly, it's just a lot easier to kind of like personally, and I speak from this from like recent and like my last couple of years experience. We've been seeing from at least the permit side things, our bigger projects on the commercial side, 5 units or more, are again easily more approved than the actual duplex and triplexes for some reason. Now, I say for some reason, but specifically when we're talking about technical side of things, and I don't want to get too technical on it, is the fact that when you're converting that house to a triplex, you're quite literally converting a small house into a small building by definition. And by doing so, you're triggering all these extra engineering, fire safety, exits, all these other things that you wouldn't even consider or is not applicable for like a duplex conversion. Like when you do a basement apartment, you don't have to worry about too much on the plumbing engineering drawings or the fire alarm. You don't have to be worried about too much because it's
Exactly.
2 units. It's a house by definition. But as soon as you get to triplex, it's a small building, and that's what triggers everything, and that's what makes everything much more expensive than what we assume a duplex would be. And that's where I'm trying to educate my investors to understand like it's not just adding one more unit. We are quite literally changing a residential to commercial quite literally and adding all these extra fees for one more unit. Is it really worth it? That's the whole argument we're getting into.
So with the rising rates and the changing in regulations now, where do you see the best opportunities for investors today?
Right now, we are definitely exploring more in the commercial to residential conversions now. Back in COVID, there was a lot of like commercial, like those small little, mom and pop stores that closed down, or you'll see those downtown areas where a lot of ground floor units that are really like, they haven't been rented out for months or years because of the whole COVID situation. So they have empty commercial space on the ground floor and they have residential above. Those are the types of properties we're looking at and we're seeing that the most value add is because we can convert those commercial spaces into residential units and add more to the income.
Okay. Okay. And wow. Okay. So, and you've converted, I think in my introduction, hundreds of these types of units. What's the secret then to finding properties with the highest and best use?
Yeah, really the secret comes down to zoning. Like it's always like the rule of thumb. Can you actually do this as a right? Or you have to get it rezoned? Did you go through all the red tape of the city's like planning department just to get this rezoned to get the number of units from like 6 to 10, for example?
Yeah.
Now, back then, like a couple of years ago, it's always been a pain to like kind of rezone everything. It still is today, but this is where we had to kind of look into the zoning specifically to see what we're allowed to do. For example, and again, this is why some people make the misunderstanding there. It's every city has different zonings. Just because a property looks similar in Hamilton, like it is to Chatham or London or Toronto, doesn't mean it's going to follow the same sort of zoning requirements there. There are some cities that just prevent residential units on the commercial space, period. No answer for buts. And there's some cities like Hamilton that allow residential units up to a certain degree. Like you can't have anything on the front side of the streetscaping, but you can have it the entire back way of the property,
Right.
right?
Right.
So there's
Okay.
different ways to look at it. Or Welling, I think Welling, what was it? It was like up to 75% can be residential and 25 must be commercial. So that definitely affects your numbers, like from 0 to 25 to 75% of it conversion. Like that's what definitely affects the numbers and kind of moves the needle in the right way that this is the right property. So for us, at least when my investors come to me for these type of questions, the first thing we dive into is the zoning. What's the current zoning? What's allowed there right now? And if the current zoning doesn't work for us, how much of a pain is it to get it rezoned or minor variances? Because it always comes down to parking. Like it's every single time it's a parking variance. We just don't have enough parking in these areas.
Right. And I was going to say, like, I was actually going to talk about that was my segue. You segued into it. Many investors struggle with zoning laws that I've spoken to when they're looking at doing a development project. So, what are some of the common mistakes that you see, and how do you think that they can avoid them?
Yeah, so a very common, like I would say the most common mistake that most people are kind of familiar with is the parking situation.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of downtown areas, this is where we kind of look in the map of the zoning, which areas or which buildings fall under downtown. And if these buildings fall under downtown core, then most of the time you don't have to provide any parking whatsoever. Very recently, one of our projects in Hamilton, we're converting it from what was it? It was a 6 to 12 unit development there. And because it's in the downtown core, we don't have to provide any parking whatsoever. We just need to provide parking spaces and just, not sorry, yeah, bicycle parking space. That's all we need to provide. Just two bicycles on the lot, no parking for cars at all. And we're allowed to do so as of right. That's per zoning today. The second most common thing I've been seeing right now is the development charges. This is where investors don't understand or where to put this whole number into their calculations. They understand the construction side and they understand a little bit of the soft costs when it comes to engineering, architects, and all that other stuff, but they don't know where to put development charges or understand how development charges are calculated. Right? When it comes to development charges, parkland fees, or even regional fees, sometimes these are the fees are not they're not as simple as like $1,000 or $2,000. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars, or even in our case, one of our projects we were going to do 8 to 11, no sorry, 4 to 11, and the charge was going to be 400,000 in just development fees because we're adding so many units to it. But because we were keeping some of the commercial space, the city was allowing us a discount on that. So reduction in the development charge. So from 400,000 that we assume, it dropped down to the 100,000.
So then I think what you're sort of getting at is that you have to develop a relationship with the municipality, right? You have to go in there to be able to sort of you have your plan, you'd like to do X, and you may have to have some flexibility in that if you want to see it succeed, because you might have to change it to a lot for these development charges. You might have, as you said, you might have to change slightly the mix of units or the mix of commercial versus residential space in order to, lower that development cost to make that project successful.
100%. And that's where it is. Like, so we have some investors going there in person and talking to the city for days before they make a decision. Obviously, we can't do that for everyone. We just do emails and making sure the city understands it. Like the way I kind of operate, just making sure we have a paper trail of everything. Yeah, it's great to talk to the city in person and have some verbal communication, but at the end of the day, you're not going to remember what happens 2 weeks down the road. I'm not going to remember 2 weeks down the road. It's better to have everything in email and making sure everyone's on the same page with that. Like, is it really 400,000 or is there some room to lower that somehow? Right. So definitely a relationship with the city does go a long way.
Okay. So tell us a little bit more about your business. You build Rojas design from the ground up. What were some of the biggest challenges you felt when you were scaling your business?
Yeah, I think the biggest like growing pains is just basically training my team to understand what's important, what's not, what we need to focus on, what the primary like sort of timelines are. Because when it comes to like custom homes or even additions, when I started out my career, we could take as almost like as long as we wanted to because we're dealing with one-on-one clients, homeowners who are still making the decision over the course of 1 or 2 years. Like we're
Right.
not going to make a decision right now for where the bathroom is going to be or where the kitchen is going to be right away. They're going to keep having second thoughts on that. When it comes to real estate projects, like the investor just wants to get the thing done. They're not too keen on designs. Obviously, the layouts matter a little bit because of the construction costs, and we understand that having that construction background. But when it comes to like how pretty it's going to look or this flows properly, it doesn't really matter. We need to get the job done properly and on time, and making sure that investors understand that we have to pump this out as soon as possible to the next phase of engineering and permit submission. And that was kind of the growing pains of teaching my team there, who are all designers by nature, and they can take their time on certain items. I'm like, no, this is a real estate project. This is where we need to focus on. It's a similar concept to where you wouldn't hire a custom home builder to do your residential project or real estate project because they understand like fine details and how pretty it looks versus an investor's focused contractor who knows how to get the job done fast, right?
Right.
Obviously
Yes.
it's good, but fast and making sure that we're not wasting time, making it look too pretty.
Yeah. Time is money to the investor.
Yes.
And usually they're borrowing funds or taking investor funds, and yeah, they have to hit a timeline because their reputation is on the line. So very different customer, very, very important. Yeah. I know that entrepreneurs, many of them, they hit a real estate ceiling. And so what strategy have you seen, or what strategies have helped you that in order to keep growing?
Yeah, I think it's more like the building types, right? Like as the more and more we work with investors, the more projects we dealt with, the more experience, of course, like that brings to the table, and the more we understand like what really works for us, right? Obviously, there's some projects there that wouldn't work for us 100%, or there's something we want to try differently, and those are the types of projects that we kind of work on and expand on, and so we don't really hit a ceiling. We just see the bigger picture at the end. For example, like, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have imagined we'd done like a church conversion, for example. But that was one project that came to our table and we were awarded that and we did a church conversion. And then I see the possibility that is possible. We can do it. It makes sense numbers wise. It works architecturally and permit wise. And then another project that just, we can do 15 to 31 units. We didn't think was possible, but it is possible. It really comes down to like the investors themselves and what ideas they have mixed in with our experience there that, there's nothing really a ceiling for us not to do.
Wow. Okay. Okay. And then, but at the same time though, I think you touched on this, from being an employee to running a successful firm, how has your mindset shifted as now an entrepreneur?
It's definitely a lot more weight when you're definitely the boss man there. It's definitely a lot more pressure. But at the same time, you have full control of your team. You have full control of what to provide your investors. We've had times where, we have sleepless nights or we work on weekends to make sure the job is done there. And we try bringing 200% of our efforts to every single project. It's a little bit more, again, pressure and stress, but at the same time, we love to see the results that it actually accomplishes for the investors. Because when they succeed, we succeed, and then we rinse and repeat the whole process.
Okay, fantastic. Um, so I want to take away a few things from our conversation today, Henry. Let me ask you, just a couple of questions here. If you could, let's call this maybe a rapid fire. Let me ask you, what has been your biggest real estate win to date?
Biggest real estate win to date. I would say that 5 to 8 unit conversion that we're working on has been very
Okay.
insightful. We haven't completed it yet, but it's all about what the education that brings to it, right? So to me, understanding and learning something is the biggest win for me because now it's something I can incorporate to the next project. So you're always learning something. And if I can go to a project and take away something from that to bring to the next project, it's always a win.
Okay. Worst investment mistake that you have learned from?
The triplex. I'm never doing that again. Believe it or not, I am not touching like single family homes or anything smaller than 5 units ever again because it's just so much of a pain and less rewarding. I always say this to some new investors I see in these networking events. It's why would you spend your whole year working on 3 units when you can work on like a 10, 15, 30 unit apartment building in that same year with almost the same effort, but you get more rewards. That sort of mindset, right? Your time is so valuable. Why limit yourself to just a triplex when you go bigger?
For sure. Great answer. Great answer. Give me one underrated city right now in Ontario for investment opportunity.
Welland. No question about it. Welland. Welland, South of St. Catharines, for people that don't know, it was like a very small city. Some of
Yeah.
my investors and I looked into it back in 2021 when we first bought into it. My
Okay.
first investor, he bought a single family home, 2,000 square feet, converted to a fourplex long before everyone else was doing it. So this was back in 2020. I did a triplex a year later. And now we're doing some commercial to residential conversions in that city. And the city is very supportive. And the one thing that people need to take away from Welland is that they are very pro development. They want more development in the city. They're willing to go to the point of like, and this is crazy enough as it is, development charges. They're willing to give back all that development charge. So let's say you're charged $100,000 for all these units they're adding in. They can give you up to 75% of that money back,
Do
or
they
they can
give
give you
that
a
to you as a credit, or did you have to, or you can take that out of your budget?
no. So how it usually works, it's like you paid a fee, you paid $1,000, but after your permit's done, they'll give you back the 75% of that,
Right.
so like
Okay.
via
I see.
check, right?
So that makes sense.
Or you can get 100% back if you meet some energy efficiency models there, which you have to do anyways. Whereas like CHMC MLI Select program, you have to do that anyways.
Yeah.
So most of the time you can get 100% back in development fees, which is huge because most cities don't actually provide that sort of credit or cash back into that.
Okay. So, okay. Now, if somebody wanted to get started today in multifamily conversions, okay, what's the first step that they should take?
It's understanding the finance of things. It's not as cheaply as some people would assume. Obviously, these buildings are purpose built. So there's always like a mindset there of understanding the financial things first, and then going into the zone in and understanding like how much or how many units we can add in without breaking the bank. Right? We've had times before where people reach out saying, "Hey, I'm looking at this building. What can we do with it?" And to me, one of the first questions I ask them is like, "What's your financial budget? Like, what are you budgeting for construction, soft costs, even timing? What are you looking at?" And 9 out of 10 times they get it wrong because they don't understand like the aspects of like how long things take, what can they actually achieve and do. Was this like $100,000 isn't going to get you far in multifamily? It's just not possible, right? With all the unit conversions and the unit fix-ups, it just $100,000 isn't enough. And even at that point, we look at zoning and we can't even do it via zoning. It's not we can't do it. Period. It's almost like guiding them every few different projects. I've had at times where I have some investors coming to me for almost a few months, looking at maybe 5, 10 different properties to kind of see which ones work out well. Right? It's almost like it's got to be a learning sort of process over the course of a few months in that way. It's never really just one project we look at and they understand it fully. I keep educating them on like, hey, this building A has these many problems. This is what we can do with it, but it's not within the budget or time frame versus building B, where it's a lot more doable, but less budget, a little bit more budget, but more time to it. It's always comparing apples to apples at that point with different cities, right? So it's really a process to educate them a little bit further on terms of zoning, at least, and understanding what is going to take the most time.
Okay. Okay. Very important points. Um, tell me something else. Where could people follow your work and connect with?
100%. So we're always on like Instagram. Instagram has been like our home base for the last couple of years. We love posting like what we do. We love educating people on what we do. I have the tendency to just educate people whenever I can, right? It's just like, hey, by the way, this is new. Did you hear about it? Or this is what we're doing right now. Are you interested to learn more about it? Right. And every time I post a story, somebody somewhere has a question about it, which is great because it's like, I love sharing this information because you never know where it's going to take you at that point.
And fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, yeah. No, you're prolifically on Instagram. I know we've connected on there before. You're always showcasing your projects, events that you're participating or even hosting. It's been fantastic. Yeah. So Henry, this has been an insightful conversation for sure. I have learned a bunch. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. Listeners, if you want to learn more, check out Rojas Empire of Design and follow Henry on social media. Until next time, keep building your empire. Take care. Did you know there's a new way to turn part of your mortgage into tax-deductible loan without increasing your payments? It's called a debt swap strategy. Smart homeowners are using it to pay down interest, pay their mortgage off faster, and boost their net worth. The best part is you can do all of this without disrupting your cash flow. So same payments, but with huge savings. If you're in a higher tax bracket, you have some investments, this strategy could save you thousands. Want to know how I put together a full guide with a real case study, breaking down the exact steps? Well, then comment debt swap below and I'll send you a free copy of the guide.